Namaste, and welcome to Oracle Aura, a space to absorb information for your soul's vibration. My name is Jada Christina, and I'll be your host today. So, our guest today is Nadine Uerata, and Nadine and I met on a beautiful retreat in Greece. She and I had some beautiful conversations, and I just thought, what better person to bring on the podcast than someone who I've already connected with and had such beautiful conversations with. So Nads is from New Zealand. She is Maori European, and she's paving through life as an empowerment coach, raising vibrations and bringing whoever is ready on the ride. She's born and bred in New Zealand, and she's an adventurer at heart. She helps people face their fears, find the obvious next step for life, and empower all those who need it along the way. She's an author, leader, speaker, and a mentor, but most importantly, she is herself. That being said, we'll go ahead and dive right into it. Enjoy this episode of Oracle Aura Podcast with Nadine Uerata. Welcome, Nads.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on. So we met about a year ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, we went on Kayla Anderson's self-love sale in Greece, and that was such a beautiful experience. And Nads, you and I had so many awesome conversations. Me, you, and Adi specifically all had lots and lots of deep talks on that boat.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, I thought we could have some more good talks on here.
Yes. I've been
Yes.
craving those talks for so long.
Oh my god, yes, me too. Me too. Especially with um with quarantine, like we're not on quarantine here anymore, but for a while it was like I just want to talk.
Yeah.
Talk to somebody who gets it. So, the first question I always ask on here is, what do you do to raise your soul's vibration?
Oh, what
Could be
do
anything.
I do? Probably just go outside because a lot of my work that I do, I'm like on the computer or doing, like marketing or content or whatever, and I'm normally inside. So going outside is sort of just breaking that up so I can breathe without having to be around any technology or, you know.
Yeah, totally. I feel that 100%. Like in the Oracle deck I have, it's actually the same deck that Kayla had us use with all those pretty like
Yes. Yep.
pastel pictures. Um I think it's called Work Your Light is the name of the deck. But on the
Mm.
Get Grounded card it says spend time in nature. And
Ah,
yeah,
yes.
spending time in nature is like we forget that like we are part of nature.
Mm.
So, what is it exactly that you do? I know you just came out with a book,
Yes.
and yeah, so tell us about your book. What's your book about?
So my book is called Unearth Dis- or Uncovering the Truth, and it's basically like snippets from my life, but in little life lessons of quotes. So it's not really like a novel or like a chapter book. It's just like a kind of like a quote book, but quotes that I've made up based on life experiences that I've had and just a different perception of what life really is compared to what you
Nice.
think it is.
Yeah. So, is that where did the title come from? Where'd you get the
Um,
inspiration for that?
I have no idea. It was when I actually don't know because when I was, so with my business, because I do coaching, I started off having like a personal brand. So it was called Nad's Wellbeing. So I had like a website around it and like Facebook page. And then I was working with a business mentor, and she suggested having more of a um, like a business brand than a personal brand. So I went through the whole process of changing that, and I came up with Maya. So in Māori, Maya means to come forth or to unearth. And I really
Mm.
like the word unearth. And so I don't know. And then so the book came about because I had always wanted to write a book since I was little, and I was always into creative writing, and I came like top 5% of like Australasian, like a year 6 writing competition, and I had always wanted to write a book. So I'd written probably, I don't know, 10 books, but they were all like unfinished, and I'd only got to like chapter 3 before I changed my mind on what I wanted to write about. And
Mhm.
so when it came to last year, I had inquired with a few different publishers on like how to get published and that sort of thing. And I hadn't even started writing. Um, I just wanted to like put the feelers out to actually see if it was like possible. And when I came up with the brand Maya and the word unearth, I the day I got made redundant from my last job, a publishing agency called me, and that's the publishing agency that I used to publish this book.
Wow.
Um, and it was all kind of, I don't know, it was all in sync with where I was, and like I'd had a crap day, like I'd been crying all day because I was like being made redundant from my job, and I was like hating on them and all that kind of thing. And then I get this call at like 9 o'clock at night saying, "Oh, we're from Ex Libris, like we want to sign you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then they're like, "Oh,
Awesome. Divine
yeah,
timing.
yes, yes, very much so." And so they'll ask me all these questions, and they're like, "Oh, so do you have the manuscript?" And I was like, "No."
Mhm.
Like no manuscript at all. And they're like, "No, that's fine. Like there's no timeline on when you need to get it done and blah blah blah." And so this was back in it was before we went to Greece. It was like at the
Okay.
end of July. So I got made redundant, but luckily I had already like paid for the Greece trip, so like that was all good. So I wasn't worrying that I wasn't going to be able to go there.
When you say made redundant, what do you mean?
Oh, so we had a restructure, and it meant that my role wasn't going to be there anymore.
Okay. In the States, we call it
Yeah.
laid off. So same as laid off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was getting laid off. Yeah.
Okay.
Um. Yeah. Yes.
Wow. So it
And
was like this one thing was ending and then this beautiful opportunity just like came in and took its place.
yeah. So I ended up writing the manuscript for it, and it was from whenever we got back from Greece to I think I finished it at the end of November or mid-November. So I
Yeah.
don't know, 3 months.
What a
But
great
I
time to
gave
write a
myself
book.
a date.
Sorry.
I know. No, that's fine. I gave myself. I didn't give myself long to write it because I wanted to get it done. And I learned from doing that if I give myself a time frame, then I'll actually do it. And if I don't, I won't. I won't do it. I'll just keep putting it off.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So I finished it, and then it got published. Start of this year, and yeah, I think I've sold like nearly 200 copies. I don't actually
Hell
know.
yeah. What? That's awesome, Nads.
Woo!
That's so cool. Yeah, I was just saying, like, that's such a great time to write a book, too, because, geez, man, did I fill up so many journals whenever I came back from Greece. Like,
Yeah.
that week was so transformational. So I feel like that was such a perfect time to come back and knock out a book.
Yes. Definitely was.
So I see you posting, or I saw you posting whenever you started kind of picking up with your social media and really getting into a flow with it. You're posting a lot of things that really inspired me about starting before you're ready. So did you find yourself kind of having to break out of some comfort zones and writing your book? Like tell us a little bit about kind of like that feeling of starting before you're ready and just making yourself do it.
Yeah. So, especially when it comes to book writing or anything really, is that the one thing that I find stops people from starting something is that they don't feel like they're going to be good at it, or they don't think they have enough either content, or they don't have enough ideas or creative inspiration to actually do it. But it's not until you actually start and step into whatever it is you're wanting to do that you find magically from wherever it is in the back of your mind, from the universe, from whatever it is that you gain inspiration from, that you actually start to get leverage on all of it, and this like magic just happens. And a lot of the time people are so scared to start because they are unsure if it's going to work, or they're unsure that it's going to be good enough, that they don't realize until once they actually start, there's already so much that they have, but they're not. It's like if you're not in the setting, you can't tap into those inspirational little clips that you have in your mind.
Totally. Absolutely. Like, so many times we're waiting to feel ready,
Mm.
but ultimately nobody ever feels ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anybody who, like, when you enter into a relationship, for example, yeah, you can
Mm.
feel like ready to a certain extent, but some part of your mind is still like, whoa, this is scary. We could get hurt. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And nothing is ever going to feel 100% like, hell yeah, I'm ready for this. Like, yeah, maybe your mind is ready for it, but there's always going to be that little nagging in the back of your mind that's like, well, maybe I'm not good enough, you
Yeah.
know?
And essentially, that's just your ego trying to protect you, and trying to,
Yes.
or either trying to protect you or trying to tell you that you're right in the sense that you're not ready.
Right.
And it's
And it's
kind of like
so,
having, it's
go ahead.
it's kind of like having like the good angel on one arm, and then the bad devil little Satan thing on the other shoulder. And they're both
Yeah.
trying to talk to you, and one's saying, "No, it's fine. Like you'll be fine. Like I got you." And then that's like your soul or your spirit. And then the little devil on the other side is like, "No, don't do it. Rah, rah, rah. Like you're gonna like fail, or like you're gonna get hurt." And then that's like your ego, and it's just a constant
Yeah.
battle with yourself.
I like to think of fear and dealing with fear as like speaking to a child who's afraid of a monster under the bed. Like, because your ego really is, it's like a child who's afraid of a monster under the bed, right? And if you say, oh, it's fine, the kid
Mm,
is still going to be scared. The kid might be quiet for long enough to go to sleep, but the kid's still going to be scared when it goes to sleep, right? But
yeah,
if
yeah.
you talk to the child and you say, I know you feel like scared right now, but you can look under here. There's really no monsters under here. Like, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be so safe when you sleep. And you
Mm.
talk to your ego that way and you say, hey, it's really okay. Like, I got this. I know I might fail, but I'm just going to learn from it. That's so much more effective in the long term than just being like, oh, be quiet. Like, it'll be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what a lot of, especially more, I guess, in our generation, and where we want to be brave, and we want to be courageous, and we want to go out and do all these things. And that's essentially what we do, is we just tell our ego to be quiet, but we don't learn to what's the word, nurture our ego in terms of why they need to be quiet.
Right. Totally. Because then when it's like you're trying to silence it and you're just trying to make it be quiet, really, like, think, going back to the example of like a child, thinking that there's a monster under the bed. If you just tell the kid to be quiet, then they're going to feel even less safe because they're going to
Mm,
feel like, the person who's supposed to be taking care of them isn't there to protect them. And it's the same
yeah.
with your ego. Like, whenever you just tell your ego to be quiet, those feelings intensify. You invite them to grow when you don't work with them. When you just
Mm.
bypass them and try to cover them up with affirmations and things like that, then don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I love
No.
affirmations, but we got to face the darkness. We can't just bypass it.
Yeah, yeah. And that break,
Yeah.
yeah. Affirmations is like, don't like, I love affirmations. I use them in my teachings. I use them when I work with clients and that sort of thing. But the biggest thing that I see, or that anyone can see, is that affirmations don't work on their own. And
No,
you can
they're like
say, like,
a
it's like
you
a
gotta
hype man to what
yeah.
it is you're doing. It's like
Exactly.
it's like the wingman. The wingman to getting what you want.
Absolutely.
Like you saying, I am a six-figure business owner. That's cool. Like that's great that you think that, but until you start doing the actions that you need to do to get there, or like I am a like best-selling author, like that affirmation right there, like that's the perfect affirmation for someone who wants to become a best-selling author. But you still got to write the book.
Totally. Absolutely. Like I just had a thought and it just escaped me. Oh, so I saw something that said um picture your future self and start showing up as her. Like what are the actions, kind of like what you're talking about? You still have to write the book, right?
Mm,
So whenever you're creating those affirmations, it's really important to look at what are the actions that a person who's already achieved that would be doing.
yes.
Like a person who's already written a book, like if you read any article online about reading a book, all of them tell you, cuz I'm working on a book right now too. All of
Mm,
them tell you start working on your next book as soon as your first book is published. All of
mm,
them tell you that, right? So
mm,
either way, whether you already have published a book or not, you're still going to be writing all the time, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So if you're telling yourself I want to be a best-selling author or I am a best-selling author, then a best-selling author probably writes a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, affirmations are a super helpful tool. So, I saw you post something recently actually about um influencers, and I really would like to talk about that
Yes.
and kind of unpack that a little bit. So, let's see. You are posting something about influencers and about how these people are literally paid to sell you an image. And honestly, I know I've spent a lot of time, or I had spent a lot of time in the past, looking at people who are living these aesthetically pleasing lives, who had all these like cool things and did all this traveling around the world, and I would just get stuck in this wormhole of comparison, which social media
Hmm.
can so easily turn into.
Yeah.
So, why is it important to kind of like check in with who you're following and see how they're making you feel?
It's sort of, I've seen a few people share this particular post from this Prince EA guy. Um, and I watched the video, and he reminds me of one of those hype guys who's just like fully into it, like knows what he's on about, and grabs your attention. I was like, oh, I like this guy. And he was talking about how the same way you put yourself out on social media in terms of what you see is the same as drinking alcohol, essentially. Or
Hmm.
it's the same as drinking something that can influence you a certain way. So if you drink coffee, it'll hype you up. If you drink alcohol, you become intoxicated from the alcohol. Or if you drink a V or um, energy drink, you have like a sugar rush. And when it comes to social media, depending on what you're following, what you're looking at, it's essentially making you intoxicated with whatever it is that you're watching. And the importance of checking in with this is that a lot of the times when we look at something or we scroll through Facebook or Instagram, is that sometimes we don't even realize what we're absorbing. So it's sort of like when we're in a big crowd of people and we absorb energy and we don't even realize it. It's sort of the same as that when we're on social media. And especially if we're constantly following people who are like millionaires or they're influencers or and when I say influencers, anyone can be an influencer, but depending on who you're following is going to determine what you think. and how you perceive what life is and what you perceive your life is. And then that's essentially how you get that comparison mind thought going. Because if you constantly see, um, say, girls and we'll just say Kylie Jenner, for example, because she's the first person that comes to mind when it comes to
Yeah.
influencers. She is like a multimillionaire. She's been on the cover of Forbes. She's one of like the youngest millionaires like ever, or billionaires or whatever it was. And we've watched her grow from this little girl up to like a young woman. And throughout her life, so much has changed for her in terms of her life and her lifestyle and how she's been brought up. But also, she's changed in terms of what she looks like, in terms of who she's with and who she surrounds herself with. And now, because she's such a big influence to a lot of young women, particularly from the ages of like as young as like 14, 15, up to the age of 30, probably, maybe even older, is that not that she's not a good person or anything, but she's in a place where she influences a lot of people. And when it comes back to us seeing people like her or anyone else, we just need to be wary of what it is that we're taking from these influences on social media, on the news, on whatever it is that we're watching, because that's where we start to see ourselves as either not good enough, or we don't have everything that they have, or we're not as um, either successful or worth what they're worth. But then we also need to check in and remember where we actually are and what we do in our lives and how we've been brought up and where we are versus where these influences are. So people with like really flash cars and all that sort of thing, we don't know their background. We don't know their story. They may have had an inheritance from like a grandfather that passed away like 10 years ago, and now they're entitled to all this money.
Right.
So the importance of checking in on who we're following is not so much based on who the influencer is that we're following, but more so on what are we wanting to get out of these people? What inspiration are we trying to gain from these people that we follow? And what are we comparing ourselves to in regards to these people that we follow, and is it serving us or is it not?
Absolutely. I think that's a great thing to check in with and to even just ask yourself the simple question, how does this make me feel? You know, whenever I was in the beauty industry, I used to follow a lot of accounts that were makeup related, and they would post videos of these girls putting on layers and layers of makeup. And then I would think, oh, well, I need to do this, and or I need to look like this. And I caught myself wanting to look different than I actually looked. And when I asked myself the question, how does this make me feel? I realized I was comparing myself. It made me feel like I wasn't good enough. It made me feel unworthy. And so I started unfollowing those accounts, and then I didn't feel like that anymore. I mean, I live 4 blocks
Hmm.
from the beach. Now I hardly wear makeup anymore.
One of an example that I seen a few years ago was back when it was sort of when like Hollywood fashion changed from, the big like poofy like ball gowns to very sleek, elegant, like split style dresses.
Mhm.
And um, all of a sudden, so when I was at high school, I don't know what you guys call it over there. Um, high school. I think it's high school over there.
Yeah, like grade 9 through
And
12 is high school here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So during those times, and you'd have like your proms over there. Um, we call them balls here. And so
Mhm.
when we would have our balls, we would like our dresses would be, the big poofy dresses and like quite
Really?
covered and you know, yeah, not to the extreme, but still more layers than not layers. There was more
Yeah.
fabric to no fabric. Yeah.
Right.
So when the Hollywood um, glamour fashion changed from being a bit more layered up to not so layered up, I noticed that the ball season changed as well in terms of what girls would wear. And these were like 14, 15, 16, 17 year olds wearing basically nothing. And like, don't get me
Right.
wrong, like the dresses were amazing and like they were beautiful, but on a 14-year-old. And it was like, at that time, it made me sad because it made me feel like girls are girls think that they need to show off more of their skin to feel beautiful, or they need to show off more boob or more leg.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying about how like Hollywood really influences the rest of the world, and the beauty
Mm,
standards that we have, they really do, or that Hollywood has, really do radiate out into the rest of the world. And I think it's so important for us to take the time to really just appreciate ourselves for who we are,
yeah.
because we're all so beautifully unique, and there's a reason that we look the way we look, you know? There's a reason that we think the way we think, and we feel the way we feel. And to be stuck in a vortex of comparing yourself to people who are literally selling you an image is just not healthy, you know?
No.
And a lot of people don't even think of social media as something that's programming your subconscious mind, but that is literally what you're doing. Like,
Mm.
you're literally programming your subconscious whenever you're looking at social media.
It's the same as if you watch the news versus if you don't watch the news. So for years, I don't think the last time I watched like a whole news feed in terms of like on the TV, I
Yeah.
don't think I've watched a whole like episode of the news since I was about 10.
Mm-hmm.
And that's purely because what is on the news, I don't even it's not that I don't believe it's real, like it is happening somewhere because it's like footage of it happening, but I just don't see it as something that I want to cloud my mind with because it doesn't serve me at all.
Absolutely. And I feel like, a lot of people's argument with the news is like, well, I have to know what's going on. Absolutely. If you want to know what's going on in the world, absolutely educate yourself with what's going on. But don't subscribe to only one source of what's
Mm,
going on, because there are
mm,
so many different sources, and every single one of those sources, whether you want to believe it or not, has some kind of bias and some kind of agenda as to what they're trying to get you to believe. So, coming back to like social media and the images that we're absorbing, every single person that you're following on social media has some kind of, I don't want to say agenda, but purpose or agenda
mm,
with what they're trying to show you. So, for instance, there's people like you and I who are trying to coach people, help people, like raise their soul's vibration and learn more about themselves and learn how to heal the collective consciousness. And then there's people who are on here trying to sell you something like yoga pants, which is
yeah.
not necessarily a bad thing because I love yoga pants. But like, then there's people who are on here trying to, make you think that you need a boob job. There's people trying to sell you different things, and not even necessarily like sell kind of has a negative connotation,
Mm,
but everybody has some kind of intention. And I guess that intention kind of inherently reaches all of us, and we can figure out what that intention is by asking ourselves, how does this make me feel? You
yeah.
know? So that was kind of a little rant. So the self-love sale. Let's talk about that a little bit, because that was such
Yeah.
a beautiful experience. So, what really stuck out to you on real quick, were you doing life coaching before that?
I was doing wellness coaching, so I was focusing
Okay.
more on wellness than overall like mindset coaching. It was more around the
Okay.
wellness side, yeah.
So now, so then you were doing, like, would you say wellness, you mean like working out and eating, or?
Yeah, so more around like nutrition and like mindset nutrition coaching.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so now, what is it that you're doing now?
So now I do empowerment coaching.
Okay. So what is
So
that like?
focusing on like inner work with self confidence and reaching for what it is that you actually want to reach and figuring out what that actually is.
That is so awesome. I remember doing a card reading for you on the self love sale. I want to say I remember this.
I remember there was a wolf one.
A wolf. Oh, yeah, something that you trickster. The one where you something that seems good may be bad or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I remember something about like you knowing all, like, you basically the card readings were telling you that you already knew the answers that you needed. You just had to follow them. I think it was
Yeah,
something
yeah,
along those
yeah.
lines. Yeah,
Yes.
because we really do always know deep down
Yeah,
what the answers
yeah.
are. So, how did the self love sale influence you? Like, what did you take from it? What were the biggest, like, influential moments for you?
The biggest thing for me, I remember, was one of the little workshops that we did around I think it was around letting go, or it was around I can't I can't fully remember what it is, but I remember pulling the card about being trapped.
Mm.
And I remember that I was so trapped in fear. I was just trapped in fear. And I remember, oh, that's right. Kayla led us through a meditation, um, and we had to like picture ourselves somewhere. I ended up picturing myself like locked in a cage or locked in a cell. And then the card that I had that we pulled out after was the trapped card, and it was literally like someone looking down in like like a pirate ship, and they have like the hold in the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like someone in the hold. And my
Wow.
vision that I had during the meditation was me being in a hold.
Wow.
And it just, after that, it just made so much sense that I was still trapped in fear of being alone. I was in the fear of being, I was trapped in the fear of being alone. And it made so much sense because from losing my dad like 7 years ago, I was always in fear of losing people. I was always in the fear of, if I was in a relationship, that I'd lose like love, or I'd lose friends, or I'd lose family. And I was just so stuck in this fear that I was going to be alone. And I absolutely hated being on my own. Like I liked my own company, but I'd get lonely really quickly. And
Mhm.
it was that one moment on that trip that I actually realized how not alone I was, because I was surrounded by all you girls.
Aw. That was such a
And it
beautiful
just,
experience, wasn't it?
I know,
I didn't mean to cut
I
you
don't
off.
think I've cried so much within like 10 days.
Oh my god, I know we all cried so much. We all did. It was really beautiful to be surrounded by other people who were healing just as much. That trip really inspired me to want to do retreats.
Yeah, so
Yeah. So, do you feel that moving through that and kind of learning that it was okay to let go is what led to the changes that came so shortly after you got back from the self love sale?
yeah, I think it was more the fact that because I had been able to actually look at fear straight in the face and acknowledge it all, and accept that I was still alive, I was still breathing, I was on this like amazing trip in Greece. Like, we were on a freaking boat in the middle of the Mediterranean Ocean, or sea, or
Such
whatever
a
it was.
dream.
And like the shit that you see on social media, and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish that I was there. Like, we were literally there.
Yes. Oh my god.
And Like for anyone who's listening to this, like that stuff is actually possible. You just have to like listen to what it is that your intuition is telling you, um, and just buy the ticket and go. Obviously when the
Yes.
borders are open again.
Yeah, yeah.
But it just opened my mind to the fact that our minds are so clouded by fear, and we're programmed to not know how to get rid of it, or we're programmed to not know how to not listen to the fear and just do it anyway. Which brings me back to the news and social media and influences, is that we're so clouded by fear and comparison that we don't know how to take that next step. And sometimes we don't even know what the next step is because we're too scared to even think of what it could be because we're so stuck in fear.
Absolutely. And the ego says, this fear is serving me, right?
Mm.
And while fear can have lessons to teach us, I are you familiar with a holistic psychologist?
Is it a person?
Yeah, that's her Instagram account.
Oh, okay. No.
Let me look up what her name is really quick so I can say her actual name.
Okay.
So her name is Dr. Nicole LaPera. And basically, she started in psychology and then she decided she wanted to incorporate a more holistic approach. So she has this video on YouTube about emotional addiction. And if you're listening to this and you find yourself stuck in cycles of fear or sadness or depression or anxiety on a regular basis, I highly recommend that you look up this video about emotional addiction by the holistic psychologist. Basically, she just explains how when we are used to feeling a certain emotion, it literally becomes a chemical addiction in our brains. So whenever we feel like fear, like what you're saying, being stuck in that cycle of fear, right? We can feel this, and the chemical cocktail that gets released in our brain whenever we feel fear can start to feel like a hit. Like we're used to that. And then on a subconscious level, some part of us gets addicted to that and wants to feel it again and again and again. And I know for me, moving forward and being stuck in fear has been such a journey. Like, there really is some part of us that thinks, oh, this fear is keeping me safe. But really, the fear can keep you small. The fear can hold you back. The fear can tell you things like, oh, I could never make that amount of money, or I could never reach that level of success, or I could never travel the world. But the reality is, the only limitations that we have are the limitations that we place on ourselves. So there's so many different ways that we can overcome fear. So, Nads, how do you help your clients overcome their fear?
Talking. Talking talking is something that is very underrated. And especially when it comes to like the topic of mental health and how people don't like to talk and they like to sit with themselves and they don't want to share because they feel like they're oversharing or no one's going to care. But what happens is that when you talk and you express everything compared to if you were to sit with yourself and try to deal with it on your own, um, it opens a lot of doors and it opens a space for your mind to just let stuff out. And a lot of the times is that even if I ask the question, what's holding you back? People will think and they'll be like, oh, I'm just like scared of uncertainty, or oh, I'm scared that I'll fail. And the fact that they're bringing it to the surface on their own is a whole lot further than what they had got to prior to talking to someone about it.
I
And
love
then
that.
and then what happens after that is that it's like the fear, it's not that the fear goes, but they just go on these on like a tangent of, oh, maybe that's why I do this, or oh, maybe that's why I haven't done that. And they just figure it out themselves.
Absolutely. It's like oh, what's her name? Brene Brown has this book called
Mm.
Daring Greatly. Have you read that before?
No, not
Oh,
that
I
one.
feel like you would love that book. But it's all about shame. And she basically states in the book that shame grows in silence. And so by talking about it, we take away its power. So it's kind of like a very similar concept to what you're saying. By talking about things, it's like we allow them out of our heads. And by
Mm,
I believe that everyone else in this world is like our mirror, right? Like when something irritates us about another person, it's almost kind of like a reflection as to something unhealed within us.
yeah,
And same goes with when we speak to someone else, even just bouncing these ideas and these concepts and these thoughts that we're having off of someone else allows us to have that mirror and see, like, oh, well, maybe that's not as scary as I thought it was. Maybe, I had the answers to this all along. It's when I talk about it that I take its power away.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I just had this like mind fart, but it's also like it's almost like people have the fear of sharing,
They
and the
do.
fear of sharing stops us from being able to obviously share, but essentially get everything else out so that fear can't be there anymore, or it can't be as powerful over us anymore.
Right. So that it's not the driving force.
Yeah, because when we don't share, when we don't talk, when we don't express what's going on with inside of us, it just it's like when they say don't bottle it up. It just
Mhm.
bottles up and it festers, and it's like making kombucha. It's like fear is the SCOBY of our kombucha bottle of our body.
Oh my goodness. And in this case, you don't want a big Scoopy.
No, no. In terms of fear, we do not want a big bottle of fear. We want a smallest bottle as possible, and we want to put in as much air as we can so that the kombucha does not brew.
So it helps to occasionally pour out your kombucha bottle by talking to someone.
Yes, yes.
Oh my goodness, I love that. And now I want a kombucha. Uh,
Uh,
oh goodness. So, one thing I feel really called to talk about right now too is that literally the opposite of fear is love. And I think it's a Rumi quote. I'm going to have to look it up because sometimes I mess up my quotes on here. Hold on. I'm Googling it.
Google, Google.
Okay. It's Osho. No, it's Rumi. No, it's Osho. Okay. All right. So there's an Osho quote that says, don't move the way fear makes you move. Move the way love makes you move. Move the way joy makes you move. And really, if you think about it, love really is the opposite of fear. Like, hate and love, I think, are closer than people realize. Fear is the opposite of love. Like,
Yeah.
when we're moving from a place of love, for instance, with writing your book, right? Like, deep down in you, I'm sure you knew that these messages would help people.
Yes.
So you could have moved from a place of fear and said, oh no, I'm scared. That's uncomfortable. I don't want to like risk making a fool of myself. I don't want to risk writing a book and nobody buys it. That's the way fear would have made you move. But the way love made you move was like, I have these messages in me and they're trying to get out and I'm going to
Mm,
share them, even if it falls on one person's ears, even if one person reads this, it's going to help somebody.
yeah.
Yeah.
On the topic of love
Yes.
and love and fear, is that with love also, when we think of love, we always think of like external love and us giving love to others and us receiving love from others, and having the perfect relationship or having like good relationships with other people and having unconditional love. We
Mm-hmm.
always forget that we have to love ourselves, and we have
Yes.
to no, I'll rephrase it. We don't have to love ourselves, but we should.
Yeah. Feels
And
better.
yeah, um and to be able to love ourselves we need to accept ourselves in whatever stage or phase that we're in. And that's one of the things that I work with people that I have as clients, is that to fully be able to receive love or give love is we need to know how to give and receive love to ourselves. And that comes from that self acceptance, from being able to see ourselves as we are right now, whether we have messy hair, whether we have makeup on or no makeup on, whether we have abs or, a six pack of beers in our belly, or whatever stage we're at in life, we still need to be able to sit with ourselves and 100% be able to accept us as we are and love ourselves as we are, because without being able to accept where we are right now, we can't truly take the next step and change into whatever it is that we want to be.
Absolutely. And so many people think that, oh, well, if I'm hard on myself, I'll be able to get to where I want to go. And that is such a lie.
Yeah.
That's a lie that your ego tells you.
Yeah.
And some part of the ego has this self preservation of like, oh, I want to be better. I want to be better. I want to be better. You can still accept yourself and love yourself right where you at and become better. And it just feels so much better when you are coming from a place of love, when you're moving the way love makes you move. Think about it. You can do the same exact action from a place of love or a place of fear, like working out. You can work out because you hate your body and you want to look different, or you can work out because you love yourself and you want to feel good. And ultimately, what's going to keep you going back to the gym? Probably going because you love yourself and you want to feel good. If you know that there's some kind of reward rather than just being stuck in this cycle of hating on yourself, you're probably a lot more likely to stick to the things that help you succeed.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, Nads, where can people find you?
People can find me in the middle of nowhere. No, I'm kidding. um, well, depending on where you are on the earth, you may not ever find me. No, so my the three main places that people can find me is my website, www.maeanz.com. So that's maeanz.com. And then Maya Coaching, Maea Coaching, on Facebook and Instagram.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on here today, Nads.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to read your book. um, so yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much for listening today, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please pop over to the iTunes store and leave us a review. I would appreciate that so much. Also, if you would like to join the conversation after each episode, feel free to pop over to the Vivid Vibes Tribe on Facebook. Have a great day, guys. Namaste.